welcome back. In case you've forgotten, my name is Nate, and I am your geologist guide here in our Geology 101 video series. But you can just think of me as Nate the Rock Guy if you prefer. So in this video lesson, we are going to talk about the difference between rocks and minerals. This is actually sort of a tricky question, so we're going to take this one step at a time. Come on, let's get started. So we're going to start by learning just a little bit about what a mineral is back here at my office. So when you think of a mineral, what do you think a mineral is? Well, if you're like many people, you might think that all minerals are these brightly colored crystals that look like little prisms. And that is what some minerals can look like. But there are a lot of minerals that don't really look like much of anything. In fact, if you picked one up, you might just call it a rock. But what makes a mineral different from your average rock is something that you can't always see right away. For something to be classified as a mineral, it has to meet some important requirements. It has to be a solid, it has to have a unique set of ingredients, and those ingredients have to be arranged in a very specific pattern. Now, there are a couple of other requirements, but let's start by talking about these three. So first off, all minerals have to be solid. If something is a liquid, then it doesn't qualify as a mineral. So a glass of water, definitely not a mineral. But you know what? If you reach into your freezer and you grab an ice cube, it turns out that an ice cube is a mineral. You see, even though it's made out of water, it meets all of our requirements for being a mineral, including the fact that it's a solid. So an ice cube actually is a mineral. I bet you didn't know that you had minerals in your freezer. So the next requirement is that each mineral will have a unique set of ingredients. So one way to think about this would be to imagine that you were trying to bake a batch of chocolate chip cookies, except that you ran out of chocolate chips. Instead of chocolate chips, what you had at home was some oatmeal and some raisins. Now, if you make those cookies using this, when they come out of the oven, are you going to have a chocolate chip cookie? Well, of course not. You're going to have an oatmeal raisin cookie. Well, you see, minerals work kind of the same way, except that the stuff in minerals aren't made out of the ingredients that you find on the shelf in your kitchen. They're actually made out of chemical elements, like sodium and silicon, aluminum and oxygen. The next requirement is that the ingredients of a particular mineral, those chemical elements that we just talked about, well, all of those ingredients have to be assembled in a very specific way. You see, each mineral is made up of billions upon billions of very, very, very small pieces called atoms. You could kind of think of each atom as being like one of these little toy blocks, only much, much smaller. Now, most minerals are made up of atoms of several different types of chemical elements, which in this case would be like having different colored blocks, a yellow block and a white block. Now, all of these atoms of different elements, well, we can assemble them in different ways. For example, I could take these blocks and I could assemble them into a regular pattern. One yellow block to one white block to one yellow block to one white block, over and over and over again, until I build up a structure with a repeating pattern like this model I've built here. But I could also take the same ingredients, the yellow blocks and the white blocks, and arrange them into a very different pattern. In the case of this model, for every 7 yellow blocks, there are just 3 white blocks. Now, both of the models I've built here are using the same chemical elements, but the number of atoms of each element that I've used and the geometric pattern they form are very different, which means that these would be 2 examples of different minerals. Alright, so let's take a look at an actual mineral instead of one of these block models. This is the mineral halite, and believe it or not, you probably ate a little bit of this mineral today. That's because halite is the name that geologists use for what you know as salt. Ugh. And let me tell you, it's really salty. So halite is made up of just 2 different elements, chlorine and sodium. And when you put a sodium atom together with a chlorine atom, the atoms will stick together, just like our building blocks. Now, if you keep adding more sodium and chlorine atoms, they will start to arrange themselves into a repeating pattern, one sodium atom for every one chlorine atom. And this pattern will repeat over and over and over again until we start to form a three-dimensional mineral crystal shaped like a cube. But remember, atoms are incredibly small, so to make a mineral crystal you can actually see, you need billions and billions of atoms all arranged into the same three-dimensional pattern. But with enough atoms, you'll eventually have a crystal of halite. Okay, let's review what we've learned so far. A mineral is a solid material that is made with a specific set of ingredients, which we call chemical elements. And the pieces, those really tiny things called atoms, are all arranged to form unique patterns. It's those different recipes of elements and the patterns they form that make each type of mineral unique from all the others. So far, scientists have recognized nearly 5,000 different named minerals. So now that we understand what a mineral is, let's talk a little bit about rocks. A rock is a naturally occurring, solid piece of the earth that is made up of a whole bunch of different minerals that are all stuck together in one solid piece. A good example of the rock would be this igneous rock right here beside me. So let's take a little bit closer look at this. So this is a type of rock called Granodiorite. It's what geologists classify as an intrusive igneous rock, which really means that this rock was formed when a big blob of really hot liquid magma solidified deep beneath the surface of the earth. Now, if we look really closely, we can see that this rock is made up of a whole bunch of different minerals. Some of the minerals are darker colored, and some of them are lighter colored. Some of these minerals are very, very hard, and some of them are much softer. But all of these minerals grew from elements floating around in the liquid magma, each type growing slowly with a unique set of ingredients arranged in a very specific pattern. Not all rocks are made out of minerals grown from a liquid magma, though. Some rocks are made from mineral fragments or even pieces of other rock that have been cemented together to form a new type of rock. These are what geologists call sedimentary rocks because they're formed from the broken mineral fragments and pieces of other rocks, called sediments, that have been worn away from one place and moved somewhere else. So you see, there are lots of different kinds of rocks out there made from all sorts of different minerals and formed in all sorts of different ways. But the name that we give to specific types of rock depends on what minerals that rock is made out of and the particular way that rock was formed. But we're going to have to talk about all of that in a different lesson. All right, it's time to review what we've learned today. Rocks are naturally occurring solid materials that are made of a bunch of different minerals or rock fragments that are randomly stuck together to form a coherent mass. In other words, rocks are made up of pieces of stuff that don't all fall apart when you try to pick them up. There are dozens of different types of rocks out there, and we classify them according to what they are made out of and how they are formed. But we need to get back to the question we started with at the beginning of this lesson. What is the difference between rocks and minerals? Well, as we've learned today, a mineral is a unique substance made from a special recipe of different elements that are arranged in a repeating pattern. While a rock is a solid chunk of the earth that's made up of a bunch of different minerals, and even other rock fragments, that are all randomly stuck together. Minerals are named according to the specific recipe and pattern of elements that they are made from, and rocks are named according to the different minerals they contain and the way in which each type of rock was formed. So I hope that gives you a pretty good introduction to the difference between rocks and minerals. There's a whole lot more to learn though, so be sure to come back and check out our other Geology 101 video lessons right here on our Rock of the Month website. Until next time though, make sure you take time to get outside and explore. There's a whole planet full of cool stuff out there for you to see.